Captain Oliver Graham stood on the observation deck, watching the holographic image of Earth slowly rotate beneath the stars. The Galactic Council's ultimatum echoed in his mind. Submit, or face annihilation. Graham, a decorated war hero turned recluse, had spent the past years in the countryside, avoiding the spotlight after a tragic mission that claimed the lives of his crew. He had tried to find peace in the isolation, but the world had other plans. Earth's leaders had received a terrifying message from the Galactic Council, demanding immediate submission or destruction. A meeting of world leaders was convened, and they realized they needed a seasoned commander to lead their defense. Admiral Samantha Clover, a longtime colleague and friend, was sent to visit Graham. She found him tending to his small garden, a stark contrast to the man she once knew. "Oliver, we need you," Clover said, her voice urgent. "The Galactic Council's threat is real, and we don't have much time." Graham shook his head, his face lined with regret. "I'm not the man for this job, Samantha. I've already lost too many." Clover's eyes softened, but her resolve remained firm. "You're the only one who can lead us. You know what's at stake." Graham's mind flashed back to the ill-fated mission that led to his retirement. He could still hear the screams of his crew, see the flames engulfing their ship. He had vowed never to step foot on a command deck again. "I can't do it," he whispered. As night fell, Graham sat alone, wrestling with his thoughts. A late-night visit from an old friend and surviving crew member, James Edwards, stirred memories of better days. Edwards, now a lieutenant, looked at Graham with a mixture of respect and concern. "I believe in you, Oliver," Edwards said, his voice steady. "We all do. Earth needs you." The words hung in the air, and Graham felt a flicker of the old fire within him. He couldn't let his fear dictate the future. He had a duty to protect those who still believed in him. The next morning, Graham reluctantly accepted the command. He knew he couldn't let Earth fall. As he stepped onto the bridge, he was greeted by familiar faces: Lieutenant James Edwards, Dr. Emily Hargrove, and Commander Richard Bryan. The fleet began assembling, showcasing advanced warships and technology, preparing for the imminent threat. Standing before his crew, Graham took a deep breath. "I know many of you have doubts. I have them too. But we stand together, and together, we will protect our home." The alarm blared, signaling the approach of the first Council scout ship. The sleek alien scout ship shimmered into view on the fleet's radar, its presence a reminder that time was running out. Captain Oliver Graham stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the screen. This was their first real test. The fleet moved into position, guided by Graham's strategic commands. The scout ship was fast and agile, but Graham's crew responded with precision. Laser fire lit up the void as the two forces clashed. Despite their initial success, it became clear that the scout ship was merely a precursor to a much larger threat. As the remnants of the scout ship drifted into the darkness, Dr. Emily Hargrove approached Graham with urgent news. "Captain, we need to talk. It's about Project Aegis." In the lab, Hargrove explained the experimental weapons capabilities. "Project Aegis can disrupt the Council's communication and control systems. It might be our only chance, but it's not ready. We're facing technical challenges, and we need more time." Graham looked at the schematics, understanding the gravity of their situation. "We don't have much time, Emily. What do you need to make it work?" "Resources and personnel. And we need to test it under real conditions," Hargrove replied. Meanwhile, in the ship's brig, an alien pilot from the scout ship had been captured. His name was Malgorth, and he offered valuable intelligence in exchange for asylum. Commander Richard Bryan was skeptical, but Graham decided to hear the alien out. Malgorth, a rogue alien opposed to the Council, shared insights into their fleet's weaknesses and hidden agendas. "The Council fears unity among its enemies. If you can disrupt their communication, you can sow confusion and weaken their resolve." The crew debated whether to trust Malgorth. Lieutenant James Edwards voiced the crew's concerns. "We're putting a lot of faith in an enemy combatant. Are we sure about this?" Graham, weighing the risks, decided that the potential benefits outweighed the dangers. We don't have the luxury of doubt. We need every advantage we can get. Training exercises intensified as the fleet incorporated Malgortha's intelligence into their strategies. The crew, initially wary of their alien ally, began to see the value of his knowledge. Bonds were formed, mistrust started to fade, and a sense of unity took hold. As days turned into weeks, Dr. Hargrove and her team worked tirelessly on Project Aegis. The challenges were numerous, but they pressed on, driven by the stakes. Graham, visiting the lab, saw the strain on Hargrove's face. "How close are we?" he asked, his voice calm but urgent. "We're almost there," Hargrove replied, adjusting a control panel. "But we need to test it." The opportunity came sooner than expected. A massive Council fleet was detected approaching Earth. The fleet's commanders had no time for second-guessing. Graham gave the order to activate Project Aegis, hoping it would function as intended. As the Council fleet drew closer, the atmosphere on the bridge was charged with anticipation. Graham addressed his crew, his voice steady and resolute. "This is it. We stand together, we fight together, and we protect our home." The alien ships loomed on the screen, their size and numbers daunting. But the fleet was ready. Project Aegis was activated, and a pulse of energy surged through the void, striking the Council ships. Instantly, the alien fleet's movements became erratic. Communications were disrupted, and confusion spread among their ranks. Seizing the moment, Graham ordered the attack. The fleet's ships moved with precision, exploiting the chaos. Malgortha's intelligence proved invaluable as the crew targeted key vulnerabilities. Laser fire and explosions filled the void as humanity fought for its survival. Despite the initial success, the Council's flagship emerged, a behemoth of advanced technology and firepower. Graham knew this was the true test. He made a bold decision to board the flagship with a small team, including Edwards, Hargrove, and Malgorth. They infiltrated the flagship, facing fierce resistance. The corridors were filled with hostile forces and traps, but the team pushed forward. Hargrove carried a portable version of Project Aegis, ready to deploy it directly within the enemy's stronghold. The team reached the command center, where Graham confronted the Council leader. Negotiation and strategy were their weapons now. The Council leader, seeing his forces in disarray, revealed a shocking twist. "This war is a distraction. There is a greater threat, one that endangers us all." Graham, processing this revelation, realized that the Council's demand for Earth's submission was part of a desperate plan to unite the galaxy against this looming menace. With the flagship disabled and the remaining Council forces retreating, a fragile understanding was reached. Humanity had proven its resilience, but the revelation of a greater threat loomed large. As the fleet regrouped, Graham addressed his crew. "We've won today, but there is much more to come. We must prepare for the challenges ahead." Captain Oliver Graham stood in the war room, a holographic map of the galaxy spread out before him. Dr. Emily Hargrove, Commander Richard Bryan, and Lieutenant James Edwards were gathered around the table, their expressions a mix of determination and concern. The recent revelation of a greater threat had shifted their focus from immediate survival to a broader, more daunting challenge. "Intel suggests the enemy is preparing for a major offensive," Graham said, pointing to a cluster of red blips on the map. "We need to be ready." Hargrove, who had been working tirelessly on Project Aegis, looked up from her datapad. "Project Aegis can be scaled up, but we need more resources. If we can disrupt their communications again, it will give us a significant advantage." Bryan interjected. "Our alliance with Malgortha's faction could be the key. If we can secure their support, we might stand a chance." Graham agreed. "Edwards, I need you to liaise with Malgorth. Ensure his people are committed and ready to act when we need them." Edwards saluted. "On it, sir." As Edwards left to contact Malgorth, Graham turned to Hargrove. "How soon can we get Project Aegis operational on a larger scale?" Hargrove sighed, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "If we can get the resources and manpower, we can have it ready in a week. But that's a big if." Graham's mind raced through the logistics. "Do whatever it takes, Emily. We don't have the luxury of time." Meanwhile, in a dimly lit cell, Malgorth sat cross-legged, meditating. The door slid open, and Edwards stepped in. The alien's eyes opened, and he studied Edwards with a calm intensity. "We need your help," Edwards began, not wasting any time. "Our survival depends on it." Malgorth nodded slowly. "I understand. My people are prepared to assist, but we need assurances. We are risking everything." Edwards met his gaze. "You have my word. We're in this together." After hours of intense negotiations and planning, a tentative alliance was formed. Malgorth's faction would provide critical support in exchange for Earth's assistance in liberating their homeworld once the immediate threat was neutralized. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Hargrove's lab became the epicenter of innovation as her team worked around the clock. Graham oversaw the fleet's preparations, his presence a constant source of inspiration for the crew. One evening, as Graham reviewed battle plans in his quarters, a knock on the door broke his concentration. It was Hargrove, her face weary but determined. "We've made a breakthrough," she announced, holding up a small, sleek device. "This portable version of Project Aegis can be deployed directly into enemy ships, disrupting their systems from within." Graham's eyes lit up with hope. "Excellent work, Emily. This could turn the tide." The next morning, the fleet assembled for a crucial briefing. The air was charged with anticipation. Graham stood before his crew, his voice steady and commanding. "We face a formidable enemy, but we are not alone. Our new allies and Project Aegis give us a fighting chance. We will strike hard and fast, disrupting their operations and forcing them into disarray. This is our moment. Let's show them what we're made of." Cheers erupted from the crew, their spirits lifted by Graham's words. The fleet moved into position, ready for the battle ahead. As the enemy fleet approached, the portable Aegis devices were deployed. Tiny drones, carrying the devices, slipped through enemy defenses and latched onto key ships. Within moments, chaos erupted among the enemy ranks as their systems malfunctioned and their formations crumbled. Graham's fleet seized the opportunity, launching a coordinated assault. Malgorth's ships provided critical support, their advanced technology giving them an edge in the fight. Laser fire and explosions filled the void as the battle raged on. Amid the chaos, Graham received a transmission from Malgorth. "We've identified the enemy flagship. If we can take it down, the rest will follow." Graham didn't hesitate. "Target the flagship. All ships focus your fire." The flagship was heavily defended, but the combined might of Graham's fleet and Malgorth's ships began to take its toll. Hargrove's portable Aegis devices continued to wreak havoc, giving the fleet a critical advantage. As the flagship's defenses weakened, Graham led a boarding party to deliver the final blow. He, Hargrove, Edwards, and Malgorth fought their way through the ship's corridors, determined to reach the command center. They encountered fierce resistance, but their resolve never wavered. With each step, they got closer to their goal. Finally, they burst into the command center, where the enemy commander stood, defiant. Graham and his team quickly subdued the commander and planted the last of the Aegis devices. The flagship's system shut down, and the remaining enemy ships began to retreat in disarray. Back on the bridge, Graham watched as the enemy fleet scattered. "We did it," he said, a mix of relief and triumph in his voice. But as the dust settled, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. The greater threat they had been warned about was still out there, and their victory had only bought them time. Captain Oliver Graham's ship coasted through the quiet of space, the recent victory providing a brief respite. However, the respite was only temporary. The larger threat loomed ever closer, casting a long shadow over their fleeting triumph. Graham knew they needed more than just tactical victories. They needed strategic leverage. Graham called his key officers to the briefing room. Dr. Emily Hargrove, Commander Richard Bryan, and Lieutenant James Edwards assembled quickly. Their faces, etched with the lines of recent battles, reflected a mixture of resolve and anticipation. "Intel suggests a new target," Graham began, his tone even but urgent. "The enemy is amassing resources at the Omicron cluster. If we strike there, We can disrupt their supply chain and buy ourselves some time. Hargrove leaned forward, her fingers drumming lightly on the table. We'll need to deploy Project Aegis again, but we can't rely solely on it. We must anticipate their adaptations. Brian added. We'll also need more firepower. Our alliance with Malgorth's faction helped us last time, but we need more allies. Graham turned to Edwards. James, I need you to scout potential allies. See if there are any factions within range willing to join our cause. Edwards approved, already formulating a plan. I'll reach out immediately. There are a few groups we've had contact with before who might be persuaded. As Edwards left to initiate contact, Graham focused on the immediate preparations. Richard, work on fortifying our defenses. Emily, refine the deployment strategy for Project Aegis. We need to be ready to move as soon as we have confirmation from Edwards. In the dim light of the communications room, Edwards sifted through potential allies. After hours of reaching out, he established a promising lead with the Valtorans, a technologically advanced species known for their formidable fleets. A holographic transmission flickered to life, displaying the image of Valtoran Admiral Sarah. Her stern expression softened slightly as Edwards outlined their plight and the stakes involved. Your struggle is not unknown to us, Lieutenant Edwards, Admiral Sarah said, her voice resonating with authority. We've observed your resilience. The Valtorans value alliances that are mutually beneficial. What can you offer in return for our aid? Edwards replied without hesitation. Assistance in liberating any territories you've lost to the enemy and access to Project Aegis technology. Together, we can weaken our common foe. Sarah considered this. Very well. We will commit a fleet to your cause. Coordinate with our envoy for further details. With the Valtorans on board, Edwards returned to the briefing room. We have the Valtorans' support, he announced. They're sending a fleet to assist us. Graham's relief was palpable. Excellent work, James. Let's finalize our plans. As the fleet prepared for the assault on the Omicron cluster, tension mounted. In the command center, the crew was a flurry of activity, checking and double-checking systems. Graham moved among them, offering words of encouragement and ensuring everything was in order. The day of the attack dawned with a grim determination. The fleet, now bolstered by Valtoran ships, approached the Omicron cluster. The enemy's presence was undeniable, their ships forming a formidable blockade around the resource depots. Graham's voice echoed through the ship's intercom. This is it, everyone. Remember, our goal is to disrupt their supply chain. Stick to your roles, and we will succeed. The battle commenced with a ferocity that tested every ounce of their resolve. Laser fire and explosions filled the space between ships, a deadly ballet of destruction. Hargrove's team deployed Project Aegis drones, which zipped through the chaos, attaching to enemy vessels and causing havoc. Brian's tactical maneuvers kept the enemy on their toes, exploiting weaknesses and coordinating strikes with the Valtoran fleet. The combined forces pushed forward, each small victory building momentum. In the midst of the battle, Graham received a critical update from Hargrove. We've pinpointed their central command ship. Taking it out will cripple their coordination. Graham relayed the orders. All units converge on the command ship. This is our chance to turn the tide. The command ship was heavily defended, but the fleet's concentrated fire began to breach its shields. Edwards led a boarding party, fighting through fierce resistance to reach the ship's core. Amidst the chaos, they planted the final Aegis device. As it activated, the command ship's systems faltered, causing confusion among the enemy ranks. Seizing the opportunity, Graham's fleet pressed the attack, overwhelming the disorganized defenders. With the command ship neutralized, the remaining enemy forces retreated. The battle was won, but Graham knew their war was far from over. This victory was a step forward, but the path ahead was still fraught with danger. As the fleet regrouped and began repairs, Graham gathered his team. We've dealt a significant blow, but we need to stay vigilant. Our next moves will determine our fate. Let's get ready for whatever comes next. In the end, the crew readied themselves for the challenges ahead, their spirits lifted by the recent success but tempered by the knowledge of the greater trials yet to come.